As part of our coverage on Death Stranding, we're going to take a look at 7 interesting observations that I noticed upon replaying the game. From a significant upgrade to an existing tech created by an ingenious inventor, to a curious fact about Sam's dreams and the supporting characters he aligned himself with. Not to mention, we'll also be covering an outrageous story surrounding a charismatic individual who's responsible for the main antagonist's actions and the sad realization that came along with it. Let's go. Number 1. Chiral Printer 2.0. With all the disadvantages DS has brought, it has also revolutionized wireless data transfer. Courtesy of the Chiral Network, their 3D printing devices are able to construct all manner of structures and hardware in a very short amount of time. But it has one limitation, as shown in this conversation.
To connect South Knot City, you'll need to make a delivery from Lake Knot City.
Huh? Not sure I follow. Why not just get them on the network? Let them print what they need.
Because you can't print everything. You do know that, right? Food, medicine, organic compounds, that blood of yours that's proven so effective against BTs? None of that can be sent via the network. Only the old-fashioned way.
This might very well soon change because the medical engineer created a printer that utilized organic compounds. By the looks of it, the device seems to be a success when she and her doctor husband helped out the mountaineer's wife. So there's a good chance that her invention will be mass-produced, and people will soon be able to create not just medicine, but also food and drink. It's also worth noting that she invented a medical interface as well, allowing doctors to interact with patients as if they're physically there.
You've brought us the next best thing to a live-in, Dr. Sam.
Her contributions to the UCA are quite substantial, and Mountain Knot is fortunate to have them as neighbors. Number 2. Cautionary Tales. Before Lucy became Sam's wife, she was a licensed psychiatrist who was tasked to cure his aphenphophobia. While the procedure was ultimately successful for a time, it's revealed that Lucy didn't believe in the phenomena brought by the DS. She thought that the beach was an imaginary construct, and Sam's repatriation skill was about near-fatal experiences. So when she became pregnant with Sam's child and started experiencing Doom's nightmares by blood, she wasn't able to handle it, which drove her to take her own life. In a somewhat related case, the geologist who got exposed to chiralium radiation from his dig site was able to endure the physiological effects that it brought initially. But over time, when the nightmares started to roll in, it bothered him so bad that he requested scrubbing agents be delivered ASAP.
I've been haunted by those visions you Doom sufferers see. That end-of-day stuff? I put the nightmares down to fatigue. The possibility of chiral contamination never even occurred to me. It's just lucky we got it before the stage.
These 2 isolated cases are quite interesting because they give us an idea on just how dangerous the extinction nightmares and chiralium contamination are. Not everyone can handle the visions. Even the most level-headed and rational individuals, when faced with it, could buckle under the stress. It's no wonder why normal people, who are more vulnerable to the effects of chiralium, have taken to isolating themselves within walled cities and shelters. It's also the reason why Bridges distribution centers have strict decontamination measures. Number 3. When did the DS happen? This is one of the fundamental questions that I was hoping to find a concrete answer for, but unfortunately I ran into a dead end. The earliest dated account that we have is an interview 15 years before DS1 from a former member of President Bridget Strand's security detail. By what's written in that note, some key moments in their world history already happened, including her operation that created Amelie into existence. If we check out the interview surrounding the first Stranding, aka the first void out which triggered the DS, there's no indication of when it happened. The closest event next to it is the Manhattan Island incident, another void out that took the life of the sitting president prior to Bridget. Just like the other one, there are no contextual clues that would point to its date. So for now, the closest we can get in establishing a starting point is through a rough estimate. Norman Reedus was in his mid-40s when DS1 came out, and by the time Sam was born, Bridget was already sworn in as president. So my guesstimation is that the New World phenomena happened around 50 years prior to the first game. This sounds about right if we compare it to side characters who were born before the DS, such as the Elder, and to those who came after, like the Evo Devo biologist. Number 4. Prophetic Dreams. With the advantage of replay hindsight, it's now very clear that Sam's dreams include glimpses into future events. For example, in the first one, we can see him wearing the Cupid necklace, even though it was handed to him a bit later. But the more interesting one here is when Sam held a baby that's connected to him in his arms. I'm still uncertain if this was referring to Lou when she had to be resuscitated, where his action closely matched what actually happened, or if this was alluding to himself, which might explain why we got a close-up of his belly scar afterwards. Right now, I'm leaning towards the former option, because it explains why the baby in this dream disappeared and turned into a BT. I think this is a glimpse into an alternative future, where Amelie wasn't able to intervene and save Lou. As far as I know, the Extinction Entity and Sam are the only characters in the entire game who have prophetic visions, and I'm curious to see if this will be carried over to the sequel. We did see a shot in DS2's Trailer 1 of what's most likely a dream, or maybe this is one of his visions, similar to the ones we've seen from the first game. Number 5. Fragile like transparent glass. All supporting characters surrounding Sam are amazing in their own ways, but in my opinion, the one who stands out the most among everyone is Fragile. We all know that she's a tragic hero who's been through a lot, and she's willing to do the right thing even at the cost of her own life. All of us saw to that when we learned of the story behind her timefall-drenched skin, and when she used her teleportation powers to transfer the entire Bridges team sequentially. But the character trait I found to be the most admirable is her honesty. I don't intend to demean the other characters, but if we think about it, when Die Hardman needed Sam to lead the second expedition, he manipulated him into doing it by using Amelie as his impetus. When Bridges needed the preppers to join the UCA through Fragile's help, she told her motivation for helping out with absolute sincerity when asked about it. When Malingen initially fabricated some details about her past, Fragile, on the other hand, has been forthright from the get-go, and even has a habit of extending a friendly gesture through the cryptobiotes she kept offering him every time they met. She's a very likable character in more ways than one. By the end of the game, we can read in one of her interview notes that her motivation in helping the UCA build back is to honor her father's work. This brings us to another startling revelation about her character, but in order to understand it, we'll need to provide some context. Number 6. Multi-Bridges. Another thing I realized later on is that Bridges is not just a logistics company. It's one of the things they focused on, but there are others as well. This is not surprising due to the nature of its origin. When Bridget became president after the Manhattan incident, her first act was to establish Bridges and help their country rebuild from the destruction caused by the DS, known as her Reconstructionist movement. It's directly funded by their government, which is why they were able to cover multiple grounds. Apart from what was mentioned, they're also responsible for building the walled cities that protected people from timefall and chiralium exposure we talked about earlier, not to mention the armed security forces that patrol within those territories. All of these activities are known to the public, but there's another one that's been kept secret for a very good reason: the Bridge Baby experiments. The result of this research created a new technology that would make BTs detectable to the naked eye and allow people to utilize the Chiral Network, but at the expense of brain-dead pregnant mothers and their unborn babies, essentially as human sacrifices. This did not sit well with Fragile's mother, who at that time was managing Fragile Express along with her husband, Since Bridges operated mainly to the east, they've partnered up with FE to have their goods delivered out west. But, unbeknownst to her, their cargo also included bridge babies. Upon learning of this, she wanted to cut ties with them, but was coerced not to. Being of a military background, she decided to go undercover with the alias Coffin to protect her family, and started recruiting independent porters to her cause. At one point, she and her recruits attacked a bridge baby facility near the distribution center west of Capital Knot. Their assault was initially successful, but it ended up with almost everyone getting destroyed when Bridges decided to blow up the entire place along with their own people. What's interesting about this, apart from Bridges having a really dark past, is that there are no mentions of other similar facilities that exist anywhere. So there's a high probability that BB-28 was one of the last surviving units. Even though Coffin survived, her mission met an untimely end, and the only recruit who carried out her legacy was none other than Higgs Monahan. Yes, Fragile's own mother is responsible for radicalizing him. That became the catalyst for when he turned into a powerful homodemons, and is therefore indirectly responsible for Fragile's tribulations. It's a depressing story that centers around one person not knowing something about the other. Higgs doesn't know that Fragile is her mentor's daughter, and Fragile in turn barely knew her mom. Coffin, meanwhile, didn't know that her actions would result in direct opposition to what her husband and daughter fought for. Only Sam knows the truth, and unfortunately would not make for a good conversation piece. So there we have it, 7 observations surrounding the story of DS. If you're interested in more related content, we've amassed a small collection in the playlist so far, and it will definitely grow as DS2's release date comes closer. I'll leave a link so you can check it out if you want.